event around the Mayan calendar ending. And his name is Michael Short, and he was on this radio show with me a couple weeks ago. And one of the things we talked about is that it is a universal moment, and that the technologies and the way we live on this material planet is a reflection of the aggregate consciousness of the people. In other words, if you look at how we're living today with all of our energy technologies and transportation technologies are destructive. They burn things, or they split the atom and cause poisonous cancer-causing radiation in the way of nuclear power, or it's burning a fuel or exploding a rocket. It's all explosive, violent. But that also kind of is reflecting this end of the Kali Yuga, the end of this cycle that we're closing up, where there's been a lot of warfare and strife and division. Whereas the new technologies are in sync with the new consciousness of unity, peace, homeostasis, balance, where you're pulling energy out of the fabric of space-time. You're not burning or destroying anything. You're not splitting the atom, causing huge amounts of radiation, like in Fukushima, that's poisoning the entire west coast of America right now. You're not burning coal that's dirtying the air and causing cancer and lung disease. So, and even in the way of the
alignment with unity.
And exactly, and it's a unity consciousness-based technology. And so all of this is kind of has to happen together, because you really can't go to this next level of science and technology without a concomitant leap in consciousness, for a couple of reasons. One, people just wouldn't get it. And number two, it'd be dangerous, because one of the things, the conversations I've had many times with people at the Pentagon and the CIA is that, you know, they'll pull me aside and they say, Dr. Greer, you know that these kind of really advanced high voltage systems that do all this, what they call WSFM, weird science and frickin' magic is what they call it at the CIA, could be turned into a weapon. I said, yes, of course. I said, I took care of many people who were killed with steak knives. I mean, you don't need a high-tech system to kill someone. But that begs this larger question of, do we go forward with 7 billion people cannibalizing the power with these destructive energy technologies, or do we come together as a people, decide to live together in unity, in peace, in collective security, and bring out the technologies that would eliminate poverty and injustice and give us a period of abundance and a foundation for social development and conscious evolution going thousands of years into the future, where we're living in harmony with Gaia, with the earth. This is this choice that we have to make, and we have to make it all of us together. And so, in a sense, even the material problems of the planet have at their root a spiritual source. And so the solution has to be spiritual. And this, as Einstein said, no problem was ever solved from the level of consciousness that created it. And so we have to achieve a different type of consciousness of peaceful cooperation. Humans are always going to have differences. You get two people together, you're going to have three opinions. But it doesn't mean you have to pull out weapons and blow each other up. And so I think that we have to find a way of going forward as a people, as a civilization, in a way that's peaceful and unified, because this next level of development is one that is based in higher consciousness, and the technologies are actually flowing out of a unity state of consciousness and physics that are incredibly powerful, but they can be misused. The early stages of that have already been done in the last 50 years, where we have taken some of these technologies that have been classified and used them to target extraterrestrial vehicles and shoot them down or disable them. And that has happened dozens of times that I'm aware of personally. And I think that this is another reason why the whole world needs to know about this issue and why disclosure is so important, but also why there has to be a very clear consciousness behind what we're doing, even with these sciences, and how they're going to be utilized. Because what we don't need to do is reinvent the mistakes of the last 100 to 200 years going forward in the next decade or two. And so we're at this point where is it a huge change that has to happen both in consciousness but also in social and political thinking and deep spirituality, not necessarily religiosity, but deep spirituality. So, well,
personally, actually, in the same direction, and this is not a plug or anything, but just to talk about how all this has affected me, is that I've started a new company based on the whole idea of unity and bringing new energies into the world. I call it Coherence Apps, and it's inspired to actually transmit through iPhones or smartphones healing energies that are individualized to people, so that whatever's going on in health can be transformed by the energy itself.
Right.
I don't think that can be made into any kind of a weaponized system. So I think there's going to be a lot of these kind of things as we get inspired to move in these directions.
Right, right. And ultimately, though, we're going to have to figure out how we're going to live on this planet in a compassionate way, not just compassionate with Gaia, but compassionate with our fellow humans, because many people talk about these apocalyptic things. I said, well, when you have almost half of the world doesn't have apothecarian, doesn't have plumbing, doesn't have adequate food or electricity or refrigeration, you have 7 billion people, and only a small number of them are living well. And they're living well because they're at the top of the pyramid in this very destructive energy system that was based in the Industrial Revolution of the 1800s of burning oil and gas and coal, and the mid-20th century with a nuclear power, which is even more destructive in many ways. If you doubt it, look at what happened in Japan. But I think that what we have to figure out is that even to be compassionate with our fellow humans, meaning all of humanity, that these science and technologies have to come out, but that we also have to be wise enough to bring them out in a way where they are used only for peaceful purposes, and that we have the means to ensure that. And actually, the head of the Air Force, there's an office of future technologies, believe it or not, and the colonel who was head of that I've met with, and I talked about this at great length. Because he knew about this area of science, and I said yes, but it gets to be a chicken egg thing. Do we keep letting so many things happen in the world because of the poverty and injustice that we just devolve further and further into conflict, or do we bring out sciences and technologies that would alleviate poverty and this conflict and stop the environmental damage, but at the same time put reasonable means in place to ensure that they're not weaponized? And I said we're going to have to figure out how to do that, and this is the huge challenge of the last 100 years that no one has wanted to talk about. What's happened is that the classified programs have just slapped security clearances on them and national security orders on these technologies and says, no, the world can't have these yet. Meanwhile, the world is dying. And and the environment is dying, and we're suffocating Gaia, and the polar ice caps are melting, and you have over half of 7 billion people living in abject poverty. So this becomes something where when you look at this, the ETs are watching this as well, frankly, and many people who've had contact do get a message about the need for healing on this planet and also to help the environment. And many people who've had contact have had that as a message from the ETs, and I think that's a message that we continue to receive, and that certainly I've had. So, well, I think we're about out of time. I don't know if you have anything else you want to share in the next couple of minutes, Bill, about your experiences, because you've had such great ones over the last couple of years.
Well, the main thing to communicate that I would say from my own experience is that anyone can actually do this. I mean, literally, There's nothing, this is not false humility. There's nothing special about me that made me available to do this. I think it's just the willingness to actually do it. Give yourself permission to actually do it.
Right.
And the techniques are developed through CSETI and through Stephen's, DVDs and books and everything to get yourself ready for it. And then it's just a matter of actually taking the step and doing it and believing that it can happen.
Right, and if you think it can happen, it will, and if you think it can't, it won't. Exactly. And so much of it has to do with your realizing that those of us who are, and this is why I love the growing circle of people from all walks of life who are having this experience. I mean, a few years ago, there was an old talk show host named Art Bell who had a show on Coast to Coast AM, and he'd like for me to be on his show. And he had a contest at one point to see if people could really remote view, and so he had put something on his refrigerator with a magnet and asked for people to remote view it. And it was sort of a contest that he did to see if anyone could really do that. And the person who called in and who got it was a man named Bob Haregrove, who lives in the San Diego area, who had come to a couple of the CSETI week-long expeditions where we teach these meditation and remote viewing techniques, and he nailed it precisely. And this guy he's sort of a saw-the-earth guy, and a title examiner and real estate guy. I mean, he wasn't sort of a guru that had spent 18 years on a bed of nails or done any esoteric ascetic training. And I remember Art Bell going, "My God, this is exactly correct, and you're the only person. How did you?" He said, and the guy said, "Well, I just went for a week out in the desert with Dr. Greer and learned to do these things, and it's easy." And so the fact is that it has nothing to do whether you've spent 40 years in an ashram or not. In reality, it's about knowing you can do it, and some instruction, and then saying, "I can do this." And so I love telling that story because Bob is such a great guy and just, again, salt of the earth sort of, not good old boy, but I mean just sort of a regular guy. And he's certainly not someone who's, has hair down to his back and braids with a flowing purple robe or anything, and he's just a regular dude, and it was such a fantastic thing that he and thousands of other people like that. And so I think what you're saying is really key, Bill, that everyone needs to understand that they absolutely can do this, can make contact, and that if they just give themselves to it and say, "I can do it," and learn the techniques, it becomes something that just flows, and it's really exciting when it starts happening.
And why not?
And why not? It's fun. It's awesome. Well, again, thank you very much, Dr. Bill Gray, for being with us today. We're about out of time, and appreciate you sharing all your accounts with us.
Thank you.
And to the folks at the World Puja Network, thank you for hosting us here every 2 weeks. And to all of you, if you're interested in this next expedition to Marco Island, Florida, it'll be in February, and the information's at etcontactnow.com. And look forward to seeing all of you there. Okay. Keep looking up, and God bless. Bye-bye.